Welcome to Broxtowe Borough Council Housing's Dropping. Just a reminder, this is being recorded and the webinar and will be popped on YouTube after. So if you don't want to be recorded, please leave now and look out for our YouTube video. So this month's topic is asset management. So everything stock condition, kitchens, bathrooms, major works and lots more Darren will tell us about. So let's do some introductions before I pop up the presentation. My name is April Hatcher. I'm the engagement manager. Raoul.
My name is Raoul de Souza. I'm the engagement coordinator at Broxtowe Borough Council.
And Darren.
Good afternoon. My name is Darren Arbel. I am the Assistant Director of Asset Management and Development here at Broxtowe Borough Council.
Thank you. So let me just share my screen. We're getting there with tech. Everyone see that?
Yep.
Right, so let's go on to so I'm just going to go through the rules and code of conduct like we do every time. So we do this to ensure respectful, inclusive and productive environment. All participants are expected to follow these guidelines. So the microphone and videos are on mute unless host allows. Use the chat respectfully, avoid spamming or off-topic comments. Stay on topic, focus on council housing. Follow-up, so hopefully if we do have any follow-up materials that we've not shared within the chat, they will be shared after the session. No disruptive behaviour, please be respectful and constructive. Respect privacy, do not record, screenshot or share content without permission. It's all going on YouTube, so you can share the video from there. These sessions will be recorded. Please keep your camera off and do not share personal details and protect your privacy. Again, try not to share personal information in the chat. Keep the questions vague. So code of conduct, we are committed to creating a safe and respectful space for all participants. By joining this webinar, you agree to treat everyone with respect, be courteous and constructive in your interactions, avoid hate speech or discriminatory language. Any form of racism, sexism, homophobia or other discriminatory behaviour will result in immediate removal. Respect privacy, do not share personal information about others without consent. Engage in good faith, we welcome diverse perspectives, but disruptive or intentionally provocative behaviour is not acceptable. And report concerns. If you witness or experience inappropriate behaviour, please notify Raoul in the chat or privately message. So Darren, it's over to you.
That's wonderful. Thank you, April, and thanks for the opportunity this afternoon to discuss housing asset management, which is a big passion of mine, which is convenient because it's also my day job as well. So just worth saying, we talk about lots of things within housing, but sometimes I do appreciate people don't fully understand some of the things that we talk about. We use a lot of acronyms and such like. So there'll be a few of them in the presentation today, and I'll seek to explain them as we go, really. So just to start with, asset management in social housing really is the strategic approach to maintaining, improving and optimizing housing stock to ensure it meets the needs of customers, it complies with regulatory standards and delivers long-term value for Broxtowe Borough Council as a landlord and also the communities that we serve in our borough. Now, it really involves balancing financial sustainability with social responsibility, ensuring homes are safe, energy efficient and fit for purpose. And effective asset management really looks to integrate data-driven decision-making, life cycle planning and investment strategies to maximise the performance of housing assets while supporting organisational objectives and customer well-being. So there's an awful lot there, but as a snapshot, that's kind of what asset management is. And what I've tried to do in this brief presentation today is just to break that into some key areas, which is on the first slide here up now. So we'll be talking about the strategic side of things, so the asset management strategy and how we've developed our current strategy and how we look to then physically deliver that. We will talk a little bit about the Decent Home Standard, which is the current legislation that we work to in terms of the condition of our stock. We must meet those standards on an annual basis to ensure we remain compliant. Decarbonisation is, of course, a big national issue. It's always in the news, and Broxtowe Borough Council is very much at the forefront within Nottinghamshire of delivering decarbonisation and energy efficiency to our housing stock. So again, we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about what we deliver on an annual basis, our capital programmes. So the year just gone, we've delivered around £11 million in the stock. We'll be doing the same this year. And we'll talk about a few future investment considerations that we're looking at currently, and some of the way that we look at our assets in terms of appraising them to make sure that they are still relevant, should we say, and they are still delivering that value to both the organisation and, more importantly, the customers that live in them. And then we'll talk about some other areas around aids and adaptations and some other services that we deliver. Okay, April, next slide, please. Okay, so as I say, we'll start with the strategic side of things. So behind the scenes, we're constantly checking the condition of our homes. And so far, as we've said on the slide, we're about 50% of the way through our current stock condition survey programme. We'll be about 70% by the end of March 2026. And that's really important so that we can, we actually understand what our stock looks like, what the condition is like, and that helps us to decide where to invest, and what to really invest in first. Really, it's like a home health check, if you know what I mean. So the way we pull our programs together annually is to make sure that we look at that data, we validate it as well. So we send surveyors out to homes to have a look to make sure the data we're holding is current. And then obviously that will then build our investment programs for the financial year. We talked a bit about the asset management strategy, which was signed off by Cabinet on the 4th of November. We had originally taken it to Cabinet in July. However, the further consultation was required and there were some amendments that were needed that members asked us to look at. So we revisited Cabinet on the 4th, and thankfully we got the strategy signed off, and that will see us through for the next 5 years. And it really maps out a roadmap for us in terms of how we will invest in our stock, how we will keep it safe, how we will keep it warm and dry, and also how we will add to our current affordable housing stock as well, which is a really important part of the strategy. So how we will look to build more homes, how we will look to acquire more properties within the borough, so we make our affordable housing stream more readily available and keep those waiting lists down to a minimum. So yeah, thank you, April. Next slide. So this slide's an interesting one, and I put the Forth Bridge on there. I'm sure, hopefully some of you will recognise that. And asset management and particularly indeed in terms of decent homes compliance, it is like painting the Forth Bridge. It never ever stops. So as we've said at the start, it is our key requirement in terms of housing standards, and we are held to account by the regulator for social housing within the consumer standard set out in their requirements, which is under safety and quality. So what this means is that we, with that data that we talked about on the previous slide, we can measure our compliance against with the decent home standard, and we can make sure that when properties fall outside of the standard, that we can invest in it, in the necessary components within a property, so a kitchen or a bathroom or a roof, when components come to their natural the end of their natural life, we can actually replace them and maintain that standard. New decent home standards are being proposed, so they're calling them Decent Homes 2 at this moment in time. And presently, the whole social housing sector has been consulted by national government in terms of what those standards should look like. Broxtowe Borough Council contributed to that consultation earlier in the year, and what those rules and new standards might look like is they might mean extra work for the organisation and investment. We don't totally know what they'll look like, but one thing's for sure, we're making plans to make sure that we can meet that extra requirement. So we're putting in plans at the moment based on what we think the standards might look like going forward. Okay, April, next slide, please. Okay, we talked a little bit about decarbonisation at the start of the session, and as we know, it's a really important important subject nationally for us as a country, and also as a council it's incredibly important. We as a landlord are compelled to meet an energy rating of a SAP C, which SAP means, we talked about those acronyms at the start, a standard assessment procedure. So it's basically the measure of how effective and efficient a property is in terms of how energy is retained and actually used and delivered within each home, really. So it's we as a council are working to a 2030 deadline, which is a national deadline for all landlords to meet, and as part of that we have our own capital budgets to do that, but we also are incredibly effective as a council at securing external funding, and we've recently secured £3 million worth of match funded warm homes grant, which will help us to deliver what we consider to be our wave 3. We've already completed 2 separate waves in terms of investment within our stock. So this is the 3rd wave, and we're having a 3 million injection matched with the 3 million that we'll be investing over a 3-year period in our social housing stock. And that predominantly will be around insulation upgrades, and the installation of solar panels. So again, it'll make sure that our homes meet that energy rating by 2030, but also importantly for residents, it will help them to lower those bills, and also show the council is continuing to contribute to the green agenda when it comes to the national picture. We currently have issues, and we'll talk a little bit about this under challenges later on in the slides, around getting access to properties to carry out those energy performance certificates, so we understand the ratings of each of our properties. And one of the messages throughout this presentation is to really the importance of allowing the council access to do this sort of work within properties, so we can make sure that we get that investment right, and we meet those regulatory standards. Okay, April, next slide please. Right, so the capital programme and our current position. So we've got an awful lot going on. We're just finishing off this year our Decent Homes investment for the year. So we anticipate being fully compliant by the end of March. And as we say, we're rolling out those energy upgrades. So we're just finished off our Princess Street and our Scalby Close projects, our external wall insulation projects, which I have attended some of the most deprived areas of our borough, in terms of making sure we can get those energy ratings up for those properties and help those residents who are living there. Of course, we're tackling damp and mould, and AWAB's law legislation came into force last month. So we're looking at both making sure that we meet the timescale requirements within the legislation, but we're also looking at how we can preventatively deal with damp and mould. So earlier in the year, we undertook a pilot where we used a lot of data around sort of energy deprivation, but also other data sets such as percentage of people that are using food banks, maybe those people who have had their gas meters capped to avoid the standing charge, and other deprivation data to proactively identify areas of the borough that might be disproportionately at risk of damp and mould. And one thing we have done is we've sent surveyors out to those areas. We've surveyed a number of those properties, and we're now demonstrating, trialling some innovative environmental sensor technology, which will allow us to understand the humidity in properties and make sure that they are performing and we're not seeing conditions that would promote damp and mould in those properties, and it would allow us to get out there and deal with those issues without waiting for the resident to ring in. One thing to say, we are over the next 5 years looking to invest around 55 million in our social housing stock, which is a huge commitment to our residents and also our wider communities as well, because that investment not only looks at the properties themselves, but it also looks at the wider estates and environments that those properties are situated in. And one of the things we have learned since the COVID pandemic is the importance of outdoor space and usable outdoor space. So we are going to be running a Decent Neighbourhoods pilot next year, which will look at it's a proof of concept project, which will look very much at the best ways of us investing in those communities and working with residents to make sure we deliver the sort of things that they want to see from their outdoor spaces to make them more friendly and welcoming but also more functional. So things like drying areas, car parking provision, and maybe, you know, some garage sites that we've got which are no longer relevant, which we can repurpose for other things. Okay, April, next slide, please. Right, so what are the other areas that we're looking at? And we touched a bit on adaptations beforehand. So we approximately deliver about £500,000 worth of adaptation services into our social housing portfolio this financial year, and we're looking to up that investment to nearly 700,000 next year. So that's a big project for us to make sure that residents can remain in their homes for as long as they possibly can, and we're helping to make sure they can continue to enjoy those properties and go about their daily lives unhindered. We've got a number of major works projects on the go at the moment, so we're working a lot in terms of, as we say, with the energy efficiency side of things. But we've also got projects that we're looking at around communal areas at the moment, and making sure that those areas are up to scratch, and also looking at a project which will look at independent living schemes next year in terms of bringing them up to a more modern standard. So they're just some of the things that we're looking at the moment. We're also got some big procurement activities on the go in terms of looking at our capital works projects over the next few years, and looking at maybe going back to the market and procuring new services which will give us better value for money. Social value is a huge thing in terms of the industry at the moment, and we are exploring and developing a current policy around how we get best value for the Broxtowe pound. So that's really centred around where we procure contracts with contractors, looking at holding them to account in terms of providing employment and training opportunities for our local people, and also looking at where we can help groups who are disproportionately sort of unable to get into the employment market, such as ex-military, ex-offenders, and young people who find it difficult through and are not in any employment or training. They call them NEETs at the moment, trying to open up opportunities to our contract partners through the money we spend every year to make sure that benefits our community. So yeah, we've also got a big project around customer engagement, something that in terms of a new group that we're looking to set up, which will help residents provide better input into the services we deliver, and have a real say in making sure the specifications that we deliver and the services that we deliver to them are relevant and what they want to see as well. We, of course, have plenty of member engagement. We're working with a couple of our elected members at the moment in terms of the asset management sort of service within the council. They've seen this presentation as well, so I've run this presentation a few times with selected members, and they'll be looking to get more involved both in the project teams that we have set up to deliver the services, but also from the wider tenant involvement groups. They'll be looking to get involved in the next financial year. And of course, there's important links with our repairs and voids team, making sure that we don't spend unnecessary money on repairs when it would be more financially viable to invest in certain things like kitchens and bathrooms. And obviously, when we have an empty property, it's a good opportunity to maybe upgrade those properties before new residents move in. So we're doing that piece of work as well. And like I say, the big deal for us in the new financial year is to really make sure that residents have a voice in what we do, because your feedback really, really matters to us, and we really welcome it. Okay, April, next slide, please. Yeah, challenges. Right, we talked a little bit about challenges, and there are plenty of challenges, unfortunately. It's not all smooth sailing when it comes to asset management. Of course, we have increasing costs across the board in terms of materials and just delivery cost, really, for our contractors. So we have to work within the parameters of our annual budgets to make sure we can continue to deliver services within the budgets that we have, which is why things like procurement are so important for us, really, and that external funding that we're bringing in to support our decarbonisation work stream. Of course, regulations continue to change. We've seen AWAB's law, as we've said earlier in the year. We're working with the Regulatory Reform Act within that, which was brought together post the Grenfell disaster. So we're working to that at the moment, and we are being held to account by the Regulator of Social Housing. But as I say, one of the things that we really struggle with as a challenge is accessing homes. either just generally just can't make contact with residents, or tenants refuse to allow us to do the work. And it's really, really important that we work with residents to make sure that we can minimise that amount of no access, which does cost money when we can't get into properties, but also it also costs us in terms of legal fees if we decide that the issue is serious enough and actually exposes the council and the safety of residents from a compliance point of view. So for example, legal costs at the moment, if we have to go for legal action, would cost us around £300 a time. So we would rather spend that on properties rather than legal action to actually get in properties and do that work that's really, really important. So yes, my real ask today would be anybody that's watching this either live or via YouTube is to really think about the importance of giving the council access to your property to carry out that critical work. Okay, April, next slide, please. Okay, so what are we looking at over the course of the next 12 months? So as I say, we're using a lot of the data that we hold at the moment to look ahead. So we're surveying, as we say, we'll look to survey every one of our properties in terms of a stock condition survey. We'll hopefully have that all done, 100% done by the end of the 25-26 financial year. We've also got a 12-month refresh of our asset management strategy, which has been scheduled for June 2026. So although it's new, we always make sure that we keep an eye on it to make sure that it's current and make sure we make any amendments as a result of any legal or legislative changes that occur during the year. And of course, we run our programs to make sure that every property meets both national standards and compliance requirements as well. And as we've said, we're looking at technology around the environmental sensors. We're also looking next week at some smart fire doors, which I'm intrigued to see what they'll be, and also some self-testing emergency lighting products as well. So we're looking at different products at the moment to see whether or not we can sort of work smarter and more effectively and keep obtaining that real-time data of our properties to make sure, as we said at the very start, that we invest at the right time and we invest where it's required, and make sure we maximise the budgets that we have available to us. Yes, April, next slide, please. So that's the end of the presentation. That's an awful lot of information to deliver in 20 odd minutes. Anybody that's watching live, it's now your turn. So I'd like to know what you thought about the presentation, what you think about asset management in general, what maybe matters most to you. And please drop your questions into the chat. Raoul is on hand to facilitate that. And of course, you can email us directly as well if you have some questions outside of this meeting or you're watching it on the recorded YouTube session at capitalworks@broxtowe.gov.uk, or you can phone us there on the number 0115 917 7777, and a colleague can put you through to the asset management department, where we'll be happy to receive any calls or queries that you may have.
Thank you. Raoul, is there anything?
Yes. So there aren't any questions in the chat, but there was a question submitted in advance from the Housing Influence panel, although I think you have partly answered it. But it was about what proportion of properties have currently had a stock condition survey, and does every property have to be visited for the stock condition survey? Do you need to get into every single property?
So it's a really good question, Raoul. I'm going to give you a really long answer if that's okay. So because there are a short and a long answer, but I'll give you the long one. So as we said on the slides, we're about halfway through the stock condition surveying process at this moment in time, and we're up to about 70% by the end of March 2026. The final 30% will be completed during the 25-26 financial year. But I think what's important to say is, of the current properties that we have surveyed, we have about 600 properties that we can't get access to. And to answer your question, Raoul, yes, we have to get into every property. Previously in social housing, there's been this mythology around cloning, which is basically if you have 10 properties on a street, and you get into 5 of them, you basically say, well, we don't need to get in the other 5. We'll assume that what those first 5 that we've been into, will assume that the other 5 look the same. And that's not a methodology that is supported by the Regulator of Social Housing, and it's certainly not supported by Broxton Borough Council either. So the real importance is to get into every property, because making the assumption that everything is the same is just not accurate enough for us to devise our investment plan. So yes, we've got another 30% to deliver as part of the 25-26 programme. Yes, we do need to get into every property. It is something that's really, really important to us, and I would really appreciate any support. Anybody that's watching this who can spread the word in terms of the importance of your landlord being allowed into the property to carry out the necessary checks to make sure that we do maintain that compliance, and we also do make sure that we replace our components as they come to the end of their natural life cycle.
Is there any final words from you? I know it's really important about access, because we do need to get in every property to make sure they're great. Is there anything else do you want to just throw in there, Darren, before we wrap up?
Yeah, there is, April. So as we've said, we're excited around a new approach to our customer involvement in our projects. In the new financial year, it's something we've been looking to evolve across the last 10 to 12 months. And what we'll be looking to do is we're looking to set up a panel, or not a panel, we're calling it a working group that feeds into the main influence panel, which will invite customers to come along and sit and give their thoughts and their input into the various work streams that we've talked about through asset management this afternoon. But if residents do want to get involved, there are opportunities to sit on project teams. There are opportunities maybe accompany our surveyors and our contractor partners out on site to complete things like when we complete various surveys, stock condition surveys, fire risk assessments, asbestos surveys and things like that. We would welcome any customers who want to get involved in that to just email or call us on those contact details that we put on the screen a minute ago, and we would be really welcome to you coming and getting involved. We do really value that involvement and that customer feedback. We recently had a couple of residents join our housing improvement board, which was really good, and we had a first session with them yesterday, and I think they both showed the value of having residents involved sitting on those panels, because sometimes they see things we don't, and ultimately we are here to deliver services to those people, and we need to make sure that we're not, we're doing that and we're not going off on sort of like a tangent in terms of what we think might be important. They're not our homes, they're our customers' homes, and I think it's really important that we get their feedback.
Yeah, definitely. As you know, from engagement side, any tenants, customers want to come on board and get involved, be on panels, workshops, go along stuff, we welcome it all. So thanks, Darren, thanks, Raoul. That brings us to the end of today's session. Thank you for joining and sharing everything that's happening in asset management. There's lots of interesting things to do and hopefully get involved in. Look out for the link in the near future on our YouTube channel, and we'll be sharing it on social media, and please share it on social media to people you think might be interested, or sign up to our housing news, which is every month. And if you'd like to get involved, message on the YouTube, send the emails or contacts to Darren or in the engagement team, or contact us council in some way, and we'll get in contact with you. Have a lovely day, and thank you very much for coming. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.